On that note, I'm going to give an update for LangChain LangGraph 1.0. So who's heard the news that 1.0 Alpha is out? 1.2. Okay. So for those that haven't heard, LangChain and LangGraph 1.0 Alpha is out, right? So we're targeting late October for the full 1.0 release. So we got about 30 days, right? The APIs are in flux. The docs are updated. So it's about time to start playing. The good thing is for LangGraph, there's not really many changes, right? At all. LangChain, they are. So the big picture in one slide is LangChain 1.0 Alpha has shifted from the LangChain we started with 2 years ago, evolved over 2 years. It started as a way to abstract between like OpenAI and other models. It started as a way to chain prompts together, hence LangChain. It evolved into this LangChain expression language, which got kind of weird, and then kind of grew into, the reason it became so popular, it was the one place before MCP where you could integrate in all these different AI tool chains together. Harrison was really good about let anyone merge into that. It was not stable, but it was useful, right? So LangChain 1.0 has changed into 10 lines you can create an agent. It is functionally the same as OpenAI's agents or the Pydantic SDK. If you look at it, functionally the same, right? LangGraph 1.0 is the same LangGraph. And who's been using LangGraph? Okay, about a third of the room. There's almost no changes in your current LangGraph implementation. It's just now going to be non-breaking. Durable execution, streaming, human in the loop, time travel, all there, right? So a lot of things that if you're developing in if you're developing your own, rolling your own code or whatever, you can go ahead and handle inside there. LangChain core, right? One really interesting thing, did anyone see the notes about standard messaging content? So the level of abstraction has moved up a little higher now that in LangChain core, in that there's basically a middleware between your message blocks, right? So you don't have to have everything crafted so specifically to each of your providers. And then the docs actually got updated, and they're not horrible. So the mental model for those that are new is LangGraph is like a runtime orchestration engine, right? It's a way that you can basically define your nodes and your edges together and say, step 1 goes to step 2, goes to step 3, goes to step 4. I can make sure that each step that there's a save point, there's a checkpoint in that. I can go ahead and roll back my agent into a previous step. I can, if I'm running my agent on like Cloud Run or something, and it drops, since the agent itself can save state to a Postgres database externally, I have state, I can respawn. It is really great. It also allows you to externalize the human in the loop and the interrupts. So if you have an approval process, right, that you can pop into your agent in using LangGraph, you can pop in and do a human in the loop. You can pause the execution and pop it either to the human that's running it or externally. LangChain itself is basically like getting started. Any one of you can pull 10 lines of code and have an agent. And functionally what happened is the old LangChain that we used for 2 years is now basically a classic. And you can still use it, it's just got to import different libraries. The LangGraph agent is now LangChain. So it is a complete rewrite and on with modern times. And if anyone's used Deep Agents, has anyone used Deep Agents yet? Anyone use Claude Code? Okay, that same pattern used in Claude Code, you can use in Deep. You can build that in a Deep Agent, and Collier's going to talk about that. So LangChain agent runs on LangGraph, is 10 lines to start, and is really easy to prototype, especially if you're using agentic development, right? So if you're using like Claude Code or Codex or Yo, what's up?
So just to clarify, how should it differ LangGraph versus LangChain going forward? With the original LangChain, what does it look like? Here's some documents, or some JSONs. I'm going to ask you a question. What is the answer? Is that changing with 4.0?
It'll still work. Just the fundamental code base has changed. Okay. Yeah. It's just a single agent definition. And you can also roll in if you have ADK. as your preferred development kit, you can roll ADK inside what's called Google's ADK, Google's agent development kit. You can run that in LangGraph. You can run small. It's basically just like an underlay that you can use for agent execution. And then your LangChain agent itself is just much smaller.
Okay, so you're just basically swapping out what's under the hood, but the interface for it, that's not.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And now will be non-breaking from now on, which is cool. So when we talked about specifically to answer your question for 1.0 alpha, it's a one agent abstraction, right? So create agent or create agents is now is on LangGraph, right? The content blocks. This is a thing that just came out like I'm not sure if it came out. I think Harrison said he was going to post. I think he posted the blog post on it. But the standardized content blocks are like your inputs and your outputs. If you switch between like OpenAI and Anthropic and another model, sometimes it shows differently in the logs for sure, right? But now you can go ahead and you can standardize the blocks no matter what your model is on the back end. So it's a lot easier to switch models. And the old stuff has moved to LangChain Legacy. So if you still want to use your any old LangChain code, you can use it. It's just in Legacy. LangGraph is, from what Harrison's told me, is there's not a lot of changes, right? There's small cleanups, right? Basically there's the core runtime is unchanged. So LangGraph has been stable. It's been working. I use it in 3 apps right now. 1 LangGraph Python, 2 in TypeScript. I'll wait till production to go into production on it, but I'm going to bring it up in the lab and be ready for it. So for the big thing that you get with LangGraph right now is because it's managing the state of your agents, you can depend on LangGraph to manage that state, to checkpoint that state, to roll back the state, and to be able to handle that externally. So it just handles that without you handling it. It handles human in the loop, which who is using human in the loop in their workflows right now? Collier, Sal, Dimitri, a couple others. So it is, that's kind of an important thing, right? Especially if you're going to do any sort of financial transactions or like, I don't know, maybe within about 60 days I'll have it doing in my approval stream for EDI transactions. I mean, some of those orders are a couple $100,000, so we'll see. The other things is time travel, so you can go back and forth within your agents. Streaming modes, so there's 4 modes that you can do now. So there's messages, which is a token stream with metadata, so chat. There's an updates streaming modes, which will update your UX, right? You can pass values, which is a full state snapshot, and then you can customize it so you can debug it, right? The time travel itself, right, is persistence and time travel, right? So you have checkpointers, which is the most important thing, right? So you can checkpoint each step in the thread, right? You can basically do, when you're using LangGraph Dev, for your local development, if you use LangGraph Dev, you can serve checkpointing there. If you're doing things in a more web scale way, you can export it to Postgres, which is really quick, really cool. And I talked about this earlier about the time travel, is that you can move to any earlier step in your workflow, right? So you can go backwards, you can modify that state and roll forward. So instead of having to like rerun an entire job, maybe you did a lot of data ingest, right? You can move backwards to a failed state and retry it, and you can fork from there. Kind of neat. For human in the loop, right? So when this is with LangGraph, you have your interrupt, right? So you can persistently interrupt the state, right? You can just leave it sitting. And remember, if you're running this either on LangGraph platform, which they may call Langsmith platform or LangChain platform, they're kind of deciding that right now. Or if you're running it on your own systems, right? Pop that state to a Postgres server, and it's there as long as your database doesn't screw up, right? You can go ahead and resume it after it's been routed appropriately to the appropriate person. You can make sure that when a tool call happens, you can do before and after tool calls. So you're like, I called the tool, it's coming back. Was my response good? Do we want to move forward? And then you can have critical approval checkpoints, which is really cool. The standard content blocks we talked about at Vue, which is, so it's normalizing across OpenAI, Anthropic, and others, right? And all your reasoning, all your citations, all your tools, but also your multimodal inputs. I think it's kind of cool. And supposedly the whole idea here is like, just like we started 2 years ago with LangChain, is makes it easier to switch between providers. Dimitri, do you have something to say about it? Yeah?
I'd say that's the area that I'm starting to get tripped up a lot now, because like I'm finding that now like the best model is so task specific now.
Mm-hmm.
Like some of the 7 billion LLMs are very good at
Yeah.
subdivision tasks.
Yeah.
And my thing before was like you run with Hugging Face and you try to use like with structured content, it just works.
Yeah.
Or once upon a time you're like, oh, I want to go from like Anthropic to OpenAI, but forget it.
Yeah.
Or you have to like rewrite half of LangChain
Mm-hmm.
to then like, especially like LangGraph, you're saying you have a LangGraph call, but then inside it you're like, okay, I have OpenAI, I have Anthropic, they look the same. I have this Hugging Face thing that is this custom thing, probably doesn't use half of what the LangChain classes are expecting, and then that just like leads you to a world of pain. You're just like, well, what am I even doing with this?
Well, I think a lot of us are both experiencing that in multiple ways, right? So I know for me, for my my meeting notes application, right? So I have all my meeting notes, my transcriptions get enriched usually at the end of the day using a stupid Python script running LangGraph. And it started with Sonnet 4 to do it, and then I was like, oh, well, what's the most efficient way of doing it? Because I'm a nerd. And that runs on, I ended up making my way down to Llama 3 8 billion parameters, right? And to be able to dynamic, and who here has gotten pissed off at Claude Code for a moment and switched over to Codex or whatever? It all happens, right? We can do that with by switching to a new CLI terminal, but the reality is when we do long running jobs, we're probably gonna have them defined as an agent. And being able to swap those transparently, pretty important, I think. So for those that are moving to 1.0 alpha, heads up, Python minimum bounced up from 3.9 to 3.10. So you're gonna have to run that. And for us, I think I might actually have to update my Node.js. I'll have to take a look at it, but 20 is the minimum. So for people that are defining what to build, right? So if you're new, the default path, start with LangChain agent. It's already in LangGraph, right? It's basically the LangGraph small agent inside of there. For your runtime design, right? You can choose your modes, define thread idle, or pick a checkpointer, right? If you're running local, you can use SQLite as a checkpointer. But if you have the opportunity to throw in like a Postgres database, you can get something that's more production ready. And then, if you are a Postgres user, most Postgres implementations support PG vector, and so now you have a database ready that if you want to build a RAG or a graph RAG or mess with any of that, it's all ready to go. And you can think about, I don't know, any of the hosted models are generally going to allow you to not have to be in DevOps hell, right? And then the last point on your concepts is the content blocks, right? By thinking about switching into content blocks, it's putting a layer of abstraction that allows us to switch models, right? Because eventually, a lot of us have seen this, where the open source models become powerful enough, or we realize we can focus our agents down, right? So for those that are new to LangChain, so proof that these runtimes, specifically LangGraph, are production grade. Yes, Nate?
Sorry, on that last slide, you mentioned streaming modes a couple of times. Could you give maybe just a couple of examples of like what you would use in a different streaming mode or something?
Yeah, so if you're doing a dashboard update, and I'm still I'm deep diving on this too, so I'm sharing as I'm learning it. From what I understand, there's like if you want more of a chat interface, there's the messages, right? And let me go back to the screen that has the list. Human loop, standard content blocks, streaming modes. Okay, so like updates, for example, that is good for dashboards, right? So if you have a dashboard and you want to pass information that dashboard, like say maybe you're using like Vue and Grid 2 or something, and you want to update elements in that dashboard, you can pass that back up in the updates mode, which I think is going to batch update. I need to debug it to see exactly how it's doing it, but like that's great for a dashboard, right? So messages, chat interface. I haven't played with values in the debug, so.
Okay, so like so messages then would be just your normal like
stream. Yeah.
Back and forth, but then if you're doing updates, it may not do it. You may have 5 or 6 back and forth, so it may not do a notification until the state change.
Yeah, it's more of a batch.
So it's based on whatever the state change or like whatever the.
As I understand it, yeah, yeah. And and again, 1.0 alpha, let's turn and burn. Let's like try it out and get some feedback. I'm looking to learn too. As I say, I am not the expert here.
It's like the note at the bottom points latency, control the latency depending on the use case.
Sorry, what?
You can control the latency depending on the use case.
Perceived latency, yeah. Which is kind of cool. Let me see. Yeah, this is a really good hour-long call with the LangChain team and a few other like power users. I like to share what I learned. I don't sure I understand it all, but I'm learning right now. So for those that are curious, there are people that are big time using LangGraph in production. Uber is, LinkedIn is, Klarna is, LangChain AI is, Always Cool Brands use it in production right now. I use it. JP Morgan Chase, Nova Bank. Anyone other big ones I'm thinking about? Collier's, Cloudflare use it? Yeah, at least one person at Cloudflare uses it. Yeah, so no, it's there. So for the anti-patterns to avoid, right? So single function agents, right? So push things into graphs. I find, so I've started writing my test harnesses in LangGraph. It's just really simple. Each of the tests drive in my graphs. I have an entrance agent, and then each test is a node on the graph, right? And it logs beautifully, so beautifully. I can go into LangSmith or LangFuse from running locally, and I get like exact breakdown of what my agents were doing, right? And what the results were. It's really, really great. Other anti-pattern is token-only streaming. Next one is ephemeral memory, right? So if you're keeping your memory in your agent, like and you expect things to stay around, like externalize it, find some sort of Postgres database to stuff it in, right? You can go to like, it's like, I don't know, $20 a month to throw one up. It's nothing. And then provider-specific parsing. I think a lot of us have learned over the past 2 years, being locked into one provider makes it so we're not doing the cool stuff. Okay, so other things, all of us have complained endlessly about docs. We spent the first year here writing training just to train ourselves up on it because the docs sucked, right? So check out the 1.0 alpha doc site. It's really, really simplified. So Python and JavaScript are together. You can switch between them. There's guides for most things. They Harrison hired in like 3 new people for docs. So he's actually putting his money behind it. So the integration docs are prioritized. And then one thing which was a feedback we've all given was it's great to have a notebook, but actually give me a template how to use this damn thing in production, right? So check out the doc site. We might find those there. Pretty cool. Other things, this came out of the call, so this isn't published yet, but this is kind of forward-looking what Harrison's thinking of. So just like with deep agents, Harrison was like, oh, there's this new pattern we're all using with Claude. We're basically using text files as shared memory back and forth. And for agent definitions, this is a really easy, quick way of hacking things together. And so he hacked together deep agents that leverage all the LangGraph stuff. So deep agents is an expand 10% deep agents, 90% LangGraph. You can do things like that on it, right? So other things are insight clusters and custom behaviors are looking at basically figuring out different, taking different insights and clustering behaviors and have that reflected in the agents. So other things are looking on the forward-looking, and this is stuff where LangGraph is looking into, which is identifying and isolating failure modes. So as more things come into production. So the future monitoring hooks are more native hooks for better observability. So like right now, you can go directly into LangSmith. You can put in a SDK, throw it in LangFuse. You can hook it into OpenTelemetry. But for those of us that are looking at our entire application stack, what are we doing? Datadog, Signaws, right? Maybe we're running Keep. I don't know if anyone using these things I talked about. You should probably check them out. They're really, really cool. And then other things that are expanding into is being able to drill all the way down. And a lot of this is coming from just like the production level insights around this. Let me see. So for anyone that is curious about learning more, there's key resources here. This is on, if you go to AIMUG.org, hit learn, go to September. All these links are there, so if you want to drill down. This presentation's up there too. I think it's linked in. On that note, I want to hand it over to Sal. Yes, sir.
How does LangChain compare to Strings SDK?
Huh?
How does LangChain compare to Strings SDK?
Strains SDK? I haven't used Strains SDK. What's your thought?
I haven't used LangChain.
So LangChain itself, and might have came in a little late, was like a 2-year-old project, one of the early integration points. We've had all of our pains and joys and hates and loves about it. Functionally what's happened with LangChain 1.0 is they took the agent inside of LangGraph and did a complete, and just pulled that in LangChain. So functionally, if you're using OpenAI's SDK, if you're using Pydantic's SDK, or if you're using the LangChain agent, it's almost looks completely the same and acts completely the same. That's the function. I don't know about Strange or anything like that. Strains.
Open source.
And the thing is, there's like 1 billion of them, and you can put them inside a LangGraph. So you can use LangGraph to orchestrate whatever. Because what is the reality? We run things in production. Like not all my agents are LangChain or LangGraph. So a lot of them are native OpenAI and Next.js, but I can run them inside LangGraph if I want. On that note.